Hi, how are you? Welcome back. Do you remember when I painted that little ghosty Halloween ambiance body painting? That's what we're doing today with dry pastels. I've started off again by taping down the edges of this page with washi tape, and I've also gone in to black out, or in this case white out, what will be the ghosty. Originally, I was going for a ghost that was just a sheet that fell straight down, no arms, no anything, but I do go back in later, change my mind to match it more to the original. I'm using Rembrandt's pastels again, the soft pastels, and this week we're using black, a dark brown, a warm brown, a red, and orange. There's a lot of prep to this video, and it came with measuring exactly how wide each different section is going to be, so I could keep it as centered and as even as possible with very little mistakes. Yeah, as you can see, I did decide to give my little ghosty arms, and I like that I did that, or else it would have been pretty boring. Okay, so I marked the washi tape with white pencil so I could see where I was going and so it wouldn't damage the actual drawing, but I start by coloring in those sections. Orange gets 2 sections, then red, then I'm using dark brown, and I'm going to blend that into the black. Because this artwork is very repetitive and it's usually just making sure everything is bold and blended, I'm going to speed through a lot of it and you're going to see it in very fast mode. It would be easier if you just observe rather than me telling you what I'm doing. When it comes to blending, I will explain what I'm doing a little bit better. But for the initial putting down of color, you just want to put down the color. It's up to you how many layers of color you apply. I apply 2 initially and then I go back in later, and I think it turned out to be 4 or 5 layers of color each, keeping in mind that the more of these products you apply, the more soft pastel there is on the page, the easier it is to blend with other colored pastels. I also want to mention that this page is not an A4 size page. This sketchbook is between A4 and A3. I don't actually know the dimensions because I've had it for years. Okay, so let's blend. I do use extra brown to blend into the black as opposed to bringing the black forward into the brown, because we do want to balance out that brown and black, and the black will overpower the brown. To blend in the red with the brown, I use that medium brown, that warm brown, because it brings in the warmness of the red and the brownness of the brown. And it acts as a really nice barrier because our red and our brown that we've selected are warm and cold tones, and they kind of clash until we end that blending color. With orange and red, it's really up to you if you want to add more red to close the orange or if you want to add more orange to bring out the red. I did a bit of both and I liked the way it turned out, so that one is on you. There's a lot of going back and forth to make sure that I got where I wanted to be because I was just not happy with the way the brown and the red was blending. By the end of this video, it looks great. Alright, for the second act, we are going in with a couple colored pencils. The colors I chose were like a mustard yellow, an orange, a deeper red, a black, and a cool brown, so I could make those trees in the background. I've skipped through the first few trees because I had tissues over the page and you wouldn't have been able to see what I was doing. But essentially what I do is I draw a tree trunk, it doesn't matter if it's straight, trees are never straight, and to color it in, I diagonally color in one direction, and then when I've done that, I diagonally color in the opposite direction. This gives the tree more texture, and it also fills in the color better. If you watched my previous video, I explained how coloring works with pencils, and that's what I did here. In terms of placement, the one tree that's closer to the center of the piece, that's in that mustard color. I only did that one because it's a very light color, you can only see it when the light reflects. The next two trees on either side are orange, then red, then brown, then black. And this part kind of scared me, removing the tape and exposing my ghosty. Because at this point, if any of the colors overlap into the white, it's kind of a mess to clean up and it takes a very long time. Here I am taking a white dry pastel and trying to round off the edges as much as I can. Over the other pastel colors, it worked perfectly fine, but over the colored pencils, I ran into some problems, so I find another solution later. At this point, I'm just doing my best to blend the colors together, not so much like I was blending the background, but enough to make it look like it's glowing or not too harsh. I've taken a black pencil to create the shadows and highlights and ridges in this sheet. I do go in later to soften it up, but in order to lay some color down, this is how I do it. And as much as my background is drawing, I draw with graphites and they're a lot easier for me to navigate. Pencils don't look the same, or else they'd be the exact same thing. So I did struggle a little with this part. But I went in anyway and I tried to do very light shading and shadows and highlights. But with graphites, I do have other tools to help me blend that don't work with colored pencils, so... I'm using that same technique here from that previous video to darken that under part of the sheet, to make it look like it's sunken in or it's the inside of the sheet. So I do go back in and cross-hatch and make that look like it's on the inside. I realized at this point that the black was too harsh, so I went in with that eraser to lift off a lot of that color because I wanted it to be subtle. I didn't want it to look like I was drawing a sheet, I wanted the sheet to look like it was flowing naturally. Because we love trial and error on this channel, I didn't like the way it was looking. It was looking too rough, too ragged, and I didn't believe it as a sheet. So I whipped out my white gouache. Now, gouache is a water-based paint. It's much like, I would describe it as a thick watercolor because it is water activated, but it is opaque, whereas watercolor is transparent. I only have white because I was using it to highlight my watercolors years ago, but I ended up using that, covering pretty much everything I had just colored in. And as you can see, it gives it a soft gradient, as opposed to harsh lines with that pencil, and I liked how that looked a lot better. Plus, we lost a lot of that black, and now that it's a soft grey, it's a lot more of what I was going for. I use it to dull the dark spots, and I use it to highlight the light spots, so it works very well for this. And I do want to eventually get into gouache painting, but in order to do that, I need to buy gouache paints, you know? Here I'm blending in the final touches, making sure all the edges have been filled in, making sure any final blending is finalized. I do spray this as well with my adhesive matte drying spray, but when I did it last time in the house stunk for like an hour, so I've done that off camera, but I did do it. Rounding off any edges now with that gouache because the dry pastel didn't work so well, but the gouache worked like a dream. And yeah, my favorite part of any kind of artwork, this satisfying magic. Thank you for watching this video. Sorry that it's a little bit shorter than the others. A lot had to be skipped through because it was very repetitive, but I hoped you enjoyed it anyway. Next week is going to be a bit of a challenge, so there's that to look forward to. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, and if you'd like to see more art, consider subscribing. And this is the final result.